beliefs about the whole group from the behavior of that one individual. However, we have the opposite belief about groups that we are a member of. For groups that we are a member of, we think, oh, we're all very different from one another. And so you shouldn't abstract anything about the group from the individuals. And so there's a study that illustrates the out-group homogeneity effect. And it was done in the late 1970s, having to do with using students from Princeton and Rutgers. And the study is predicated on the idea that Princeton and Rutgers are rivals. And my guess is that people at Rutgers would like to think that, but I'm not so sure that people at Princeton think that Rutgers are their rivals. But okay, the study was convenient because they're close to each other, so you could do the study without having to drive a lot of miles, and it worked nonetheless. Subjects are shown, either Princeton students or Rutgers students, they're shown a videotape of a student making a decision. And the subjects are told, hey, the guy in the videotape, he goes to your school, or you're told he goes to the other school. And it just was whatever school you went to. If you went to Princeton, you're told you went to Princeton or Rutgers. On the tape, you see this subject who you think goes to your school or not make a decision. He's participating in a study, the equipment breaks, and he has to decide whether he's going to wait alone in the testing room for somebody to come fix the equipment, or whether he's going to wait in a waiting room with other people. It's a boring, not important decision, and that's for a reason, because the researchers wanted to make sure that subjects didn't have any a priori ideas like, oh, all Princeton students like to wait alone. Nobody had that belief. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. So it was a really nonsensical decision. So subjects should not have a prior expectation about this decision, and subjects are asked after watching the video, what % of people who go to the same school as the person in the video would make the same choice as the person in the video? Now, the correct answer is, I have no idea. Basically, it's even 50-50. You have no idea whether other Princeton students would make the same decision or other Rutgers students would make the same decision. And so let me tell you the results as though the subject is a Rutgers student. But it would work, it's identical the other way around. It's just easier to tell you the results by just choosing one school. If a Rutgers subject sees what they thought is another Rutgers student in the video, they thought that about 55% of other Rutgers students would make the same choice. So that's pretty accurate. If you think the person in the video went to your own school, you would say like, oh, I don't know, some people would do that, some people wouldn't do it. That's pretty accurate. However, if you're a Rutgers student subject, and the person in the video you think is a Princeton student, and again, the video is always the same, but if you think that person is a Princeton student, then you say that 70% of Princeton students would make the same choice. And again, it works vice versa. So if you're a Princeton student, you're going to say half of the Princeton students would make the same choice, but 70% of the Rutgers students would make the same choice. It's a small but significant difference, and the point is that we think that groups that we're a member of, we're all very different from one another. But groups that we're not a member of, they're all very similar to one another. And it's really, once we have that belief that groups that we're not a member of are all homogenous, they're all similar to one another, then it is logical in a sense that we develop stereotypes about those groups, because to the extent that we believe, usually incorrectly, that the groups are homogenous, in homogenous groups you can make inferences about the group from an individual's behavior. So then you end up developing stereotypes based on what one person does, ignoring how heterogeneous the other groups are. Because in fact, the reality is, all groups are pretty much equally homogenous or not. Our group is just as homogenous or not as the other group. So we think we're all very different from one another, but those other group people are all very similar. And you see this really powerfully, I think, in political debates, when you see topics that are really politically divisive, and we can see this in ourselves, depending on what side of a position we're in. We'll think, oh, everybody on the other side, they're all the same. They all have the same belief, they're all the same personality, they all have the same mental problem, whatever. But people in my group, we all come to this opinion by many complex thoughts and through many pathways. So we're all very complex and different, but those other people, they're all the same. There's a related belief that we see in political arguments that is called naive realism. And this is the belief that if people who disagree with me only knew what I know, then they would logically come to agree with me. If I could simply sit down with people who don't agree with me and show them the information that led me to my beliefs, then they would come to believe my beliefs. And that does not work. We have these biases in how we think about groups that we're not a member of, such that we have these beliefs that they're basically all dumb, uninformed, and similar to each other. And the fact that they're similar to each other makes it easier for us to believe that they're dumb and uninformed. Makes it easy for us to believe, to develop stereotypes. And we have much more nuanced beliefs about our own groups. And it's this belief that all other groups are very similar to each other that makes us susceptible to developing stereotypes. So, illusory correlation and outgroup homogeneity tell us how we can develop stereotypes even without any good evidence to support the stereotype. On Monday, we'll talk about how we can actually maintain stereotypes even when we're shown evidence that goes against the stereotypes, how we keep them, and then we'll finally talk about what can be done to reduce stereotypes, prejudice, and discrimination. Have a good weekend. I hope to be back over there with my useful voice on Monday, so I'll see you then.